Likkutei Torah, Yom Kippur, page Samaches, first column, 15 lines in the end of the column. Okay, now Rabbi asks the question, one pasuk says, Shabbos Shabbosin hu lochem, masculine. Another pasuk says, Shabbos Shabbosin hi lochem, which is feminine. So the Rabbi started discussing that there's a tshuva for positive mitzvah. As soon as you do tshuva, you're forgiven. So yes, l'chayra, but a positive mitzvah pushes off a negative mitzvah. So seemingly the tshuva for a positive mitzvah should be more difficult than the tshuva for a negative mitzvah. So now the Rabbi starts explaining that what's the concept of Hashivena Hashem Melechav and Hashuva. Sometimes it starts from us, sometimes it starts from Hashem. The Rabbi is explaining a Jew is never far from Hashem. They're just standing next to each other, but they'll be facing the opposite direction, back to back. So they're physically they're close to each other, but emotionally they're very emotionally they're very opposite ends of the world. So a Jew is always close to Hashem. The essence of the Jew is always close to Hashem. Sometimes the sins get in the way. So then the Rebbe said, we'll understand this by the union of Shabbos. Hashem created the world in 6 days, rested on the 7th. What does that mean? He starts explaining that Hashem's power in the world is very, very minimal. Mamash, one word compared to the power of speech. It's like basically the world is non-existent, and therefore it's a level of Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi. And therefore he says like this, in 15 lines, a few lines we learned. It's not similar. Hashem giving existence to the world. It's not like the neshama giving life to the body. That it dresses itself in it to give it life. And the neshama is affected by the body. And this we're up to. By Hashem, the world doesn't cause any change in Hashem whatsoever. Even though logically it would seem that before Hashem has to give life to nobody, nothing. And now he has to give life to trillions and trillions and trillions of creations. So seemingly that should cause a change in Hashem. Comes the pasuk and says, Ani Hashem lo shanisi. Why? Because the whole existence of the world is nothing, literally nothing compared to Hashem. Like it says, Atahu ad shalei nivra ha'olam. We say in davening every day. Simply it means, you were there before the world. Atahu mishin nivra ha'olam. You're there now that the world was created. But Chassidus explains that's not what it means. It doesn't mean, God, you were there before, now you're here also. It means the same way. Atahu, the same way you existed before world, meaning nothing existed but you. Atahu mishinivrelim, it's the same you now that there is a world, because the world doesn't change you in any way whatsoever. Why? It's because Hashem doesn't come into the worlds. The essence of Hashem is not involved in the world, because if it would be changing world. It's only a ray of a ray. In fact, that's what these days, Shir Tanya is Echad. The Rebbe's big chiddush that Or creates, but Or is made Amor, whatever it is. That Hashem wanted to be a king. And is their existence, what he's called their name. Like it says, hey, they aled, it's a shemayim. What do we say in davening? Yalu Hashem, Hashem, praise the name of Hashem. Ki nizgav shemay levade. Hashem's name is exalted from everything. Hey, they, his ray. What does it mean, his ray? It means his ray of his name. It's not the ray of Hashem. Haydei means the ray of his name, which itself is minimal, Vispash, and this manifestation. Is in the level of Pneumius. Meaning like this. The fact that Hashem creates worlds, he's really nothing to do with them. It's just a slight ray of a ray of a ray of a ray, whatever, that deals with the world. But Hashem himself has nothing to do with the world at all. So during the week, Hashem is revealing this mini ray to make the world exist. What happens on Shabbos? Hashem stops creating, which means it becomes elevated, the pnimis of Hashem, and that's why it's called Shvisa Etzli, therefore it's called resting. Hashem, Kivei Shavas Mikol Malachta, it says Hashem rested. Now normally a person rests when you get tired, you need to rest. But Hashem, he didn't do anything. I mean, why is he resting from? So it means, Al Derech Mashal, Kadam HaMedaber, like a person when he speaks something. B'shashu Medaber, when a person speaks, B'tzamsim Sichlei, he has to limit his intelligence, his seichel, Umerida Badiburim, and he has to lower his intellect into the words that he needs to speak. If a guy has to give a talk, yeah? So he has to limit, he's using his brain to limit the words that he can speak, that people would understand it. Then, when he wants to stop talking, so this revelation of the mind to be limited, to come into words, doesn't exist anymore, because he's not talking. Then the seichel goes back to the source, comes from. In other words, when a person speaks, they have to limit their brain into the words. So their seichel is involved in what they're speaking. They stop talking, they finish the speech. So now the seichel goes back, the limited seichel is not limiting it anymore, so it goes back to the origin. So he says, Kain v'yasimi kain land ketz, how much, even infinitely more so. And what happens on Shabbos? It goes infinitely greater even than the level of seichel, even the level of chokhmah. It goes back to a level, it goes back to such a level that chokhmah, the highest level of all the four worlds, and asiyah, the lowest level of all worlds, are equal. Like it says, kulam b'chokhmah asisa. We say every day in davening, it's a pasuk, but in Tillim, but we say every day in davening, kulam b'chokhmah asisa, literally means you made everything with chokhmah.
This is the opposite of what it says 10 minutes ago. First it said that there's no connection between how much Torah.
Yeah, so what is connected? No, a slight ray. No. And then what happens? So it's a very minimal ray that comes down. Now, what happens on Shabbos? Hashem stops creating. So it goes, but not by a person, the speech goes back to the seichel. Instead of lowering the seichel into speech, you go bring the seichel back to where it belongs. But by Hashem, it's not going back to seichel, to chokhmah. It's going to infinitely greater than chokhmah. One second. Why? Because the pasuk kulam b'chokhmah asisa. Simply it means Hashem made everything with wisdom. But Chassidus interprets kulam by the level of Elokus, chokhmah asisa, the highest level and the lowest level are all equal. In simple English, compared to infinite, 1 and a trillion is all the same. What happens on Shabbos? Unlike a person, the seichel coming into speech goes back to seichel in its source. Here it goes back to a level of elokus that there is no world. What did you want? What's your problem? I understand, but like the expression is, and this we learned in Torah, in the famous Maamar Pasuk Leo. The Alter Rebbe says, what does it mean, Antu Chakim? What we say in Pasuk Leo. Ant Chakim v'lei b'chachma yadir. You have Chachma, but not with the known level of Chachma. So over there, the Alter Rebbe explains, what is Chakim v'lei b'chachma yadir? Chakim means there's no level of Chachma there. It's the source that Chachma comes from. It's like he said, the flintstone is a source of fire. It's a source of it. But you smash it together, you're gonna rub it together, you're gonna get fire. So it's a source of fire, but it's nothing to do with fire. Antu chakim v'olei b'chachma yadim means Hashem is the source of chachma, but there is no chachma there. It's infinitely greater than chachma. So what happens on Shabbos? That's why it's called Dunamita de Zah. Zah falls asleep. The Alter Rebbe, every Friday night when Shabbos is beginning, he fell asleep automatically. The Alter Rebbe fell asleep. Why? Because Lamaila, when Shabbos begins, it's called Dunamita de Zah. Zah goes to sleep, meaning the Keiches go back to where they were. And Alter Rebbe lived basically in the higher worlds. So Rabbi Hillel Paritch used to go to sleep. He didn't fall asleep. He used to go to sleep. The Mita Dezah. In fact, the Maggid also used to fall asleep Friday night when Shabbos began. Wasn't that he was tired, he went to sleep. He fell asleep. And in fact, the story is told by many people. They say the whole Shir HaShirim Friday night. After Mincha, they say Shir HaShirim, or before Mincha, whatever. So the story is told that the Maggid fell asleep, like every Friday night, and his Talmidim were saying Shir HaShirim in the shul. It's great Talmidim. So the Maggid sent out that they're saying Shir HaShirim is disturbing his sleep. Not because they were screaming and he couldn't sleep. He was sleeping, and what they were saying Shir HaShirim was accomplishing things up there, and up there they're getting mixed up, it was disturbing him up there. So Shabbos, every Friday night, Elokus leaves the world. The Pnimis leaves, and then the Chitzenius comes. So how does the world exist? So then the world exists from Chitzenius, because the Pnimis leaves. So then the question is, on Rosh Hashanah night, we also learned Hashem leaves the world. Yeah, but over there it says the Chitzenius leaves. But the question is, Rosh Hashanah that falls out on Shabbos, the Pnimis leaves and the Chitzenius leave. So how can the world exist? And the answer is, Chassidus does. The Pnimis are the Chitzenius are the Pnimis, it's a whole... Anyway, we still exist, don't worry about it. And because Yidden come from a very high level of Machshava, like it says, Ata nefachtabi, man enough you blow from your essence, and like Chazal say, me'ayin basa. In Pirkei Avos, right? It says you have to reflect on three things, and you'll never come to sin. What is one of the things? Me'ayin basa. Where do you come from? You come from a putrid drop, right? So Chassidus says, Pirush, from the level of ayin, which is the chachma, chachma. It says like this. When you say, learn in Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, reflect on three things and you'll never come to sin. Me'ayin basa olan atahelech, and before whom you have to give a din v'cheshbon. So Chassidus explains, you should know, this is not a, you should know, ma'ayin basa. You come from the level of ayin. Chachma ma'ayin timatze. Chachma comes from the level of ayin. Which means the level of ayin, nothingness, is higher than chachma. The source of chachma, which is the highest of all the sfiras, is ayin. And the Mishnah says, mi ayin basa, you come from the level of ayin. Or like we learned many times in Shir HaMalos. Esa einai Elohodim in the Rebbe's capital, right? Mi ayin yovei ezri. Simply, I lift up my eyes to the heaven, from where will my help come? It's a question. The Chassidus explains, no. Esa einai Elohodim, I lift my eyes. Me'ayin, from the level of ayin, yovei ezri, will come to help. Because a Jew comes from ayin. That's why it says, Ein mazel Yisrael, Jew doesn't have mazel. So Chassidus says it doesn't mean Ein, there is no. Ayin mazel Yisrael. What is the source of the Yidden? The level of ayin. So this is the concept of Shabbos. And it says, Shebachin is madregis Yisrael. The level of the Neshamas is made is infinitely greater than the creation of a world which comes from the external level of Malchus, which is the lowest level. Therefore, it says the Yidden guard, keep the Shabbos, to become holy in the Kedusha of Shabbos. That it should be Shabbos, Hashem Elokecha, Beini ubein b'nei Yisrael, Eisi Kleimar, Kameini Kamehem Kaviyachol. Hashem says, like me is what you guys should be. Like we said, Kedushasi Lamaila. Your Kedusha up there comes from the Kedusha of the Yid. This is all remarkable stuff, by the way. That without Chizis, you don't got this stuff. That the Neshama of a Yid is connected to a level completely higher than world, from the level of Ayin. And you see that in all the Ayin Basa, Ayin Yavi Ezri, Ein Mazel Yisrael, these are all the levels of Ayin that a Jew is connected to. Every single Jew. Even a Jew doesn't believe nothing. In the essence, that's where they come from. And that's what it says, Sheish es Yamim Tavi, B'chinas Chitzenis Asiyah, to do external work, Kedei Parnasos, to make a living, B'yayim Ashvi Shabbos Hashem Mis'al B'mkered Dekula. And then the Neshama goes back up on Shabbos. Li Batal Elav, to become Batal to him, Uludavka Be'ez Baruch. By the way, this is the way the Rebbe explains the halacha. It says, now in Rama you learn the name of Demai. Demai means grain of an Amoritz. We don't know if he tithed or not. So the Gemara says, the Rama brings down that in the days of Yechon Kohen Gadol, who was a Kohen Gadol for 80 years and then became the Tzeduki. So he sent out messengers and he found that Truma, the Jews were separating. Because one little kernel is good enough for a whole silo. Anyway, so he made that grain of an illiterate, of an amoretz, is demai. What does demai mean? It means two words. Domai, what is it? We assume that they didn't tithe. So therefore you're not, and you don't believe him. If an amoretz says he tithed, you don't believe him. So the Gemara says, on Shabbos you could eat by an amoretz. If he says he tithed, you believe him. So it says in Yerushalmi, why? Amoretz eina meshakir b'Shabbos. An amoretz doesn't lie on Shabbos. Even an amoretz doesn't lie on Shabbos. A whole week you don't trust him, Shabbos he doesn't lie. So the reason is why? So it says because of the Kedusha of Shabbos, the Kedusha of Shabbos infiltrates him to such an extent that he doesn't lie. So that everyone said, if I find people lie on Shabbos. According to this Gemara, nobody should ever lie on Shabbos. And always people, oh yeah, I'll come, I'll give it, all that lie, all those lies. So Rabbi explains, it's an interesting point that I've made. Free choice is not taken away. Meaning like this, by nature, a Jew cannot lie on Shabbos. A Jew can choose to lie. A Jew can choose to lie, but then you're choosing to go against your nature. By nature, the Gemara says, Amoretz eina meshakir b'Shabbos, and Amoretz can't lie on Shabbos. Why? Because on Shabbos, the Neshama is going up to a place higher than world. Alu b'machshav. And that's revealed on Shabbos.
Rabbi, does it have to go through the 7 to become a Shabbos?
6, you mean?
I mean 6.
Yeah.
Tuesday become a Shabbos?
No, that's what he's going to explain now in the next paragraph. He's going to explain that the Gemara says, Misha Torach Be'erev Shabbos, is going to quote right away. Misha Torach Be'erev Shabbos, simply the Gemara says, if you work on Friday, you'll have what to eat on Shabbos. Misha Torach Be'erev Shabbos, if you work, cook basically, you'll have what to eat on Shabbos. So Chassidus says, I need a Gemara to tell me if you don't cook, you're not going to have food. What do you take out? Okay, but I'm saying, what's the Gemara saying? So Chassidus explains, no. In order to come to Shabbos, you have to have the Aved of Sheishes Yomim Taved. You have to create, you have to work 6 days, and then, only then can you come to Shabbos. Now again, work doesn't mean work, it means creativity. Or when it says Sheishis Yomim Ta'aved, in Medrash Sifri says, Zu mitzvah saseh. There's a positive mitzvah to work 6 days. It doesn't mean working. What does work by Shabbos mean? Creativity, like we learned. Ta'aved is Evet. Through by being 6 days of being an Evet, meaning whatever you do is bittul to Hashem and Avodas Hashem, so then you come to the level of Shabbos.
So if I'm in the middle of the sea, I don't know what day it is, I cannot say, okay, I call today Shabbos.
No, so there's dinim in Shulchan If you're the Gemara says in Shulchan brings down, you count 6 days and then keep Shabbos. If you don't remember it all when you left. There has to be a wait of 6 days, of the 6 spheres, and then you can cause through that the neshama to go up.
But the level of ayin is always there.
The level of ayin is always there. The source of nourishment of the neshama comes from the level of ayin, which explains, that's why, when the Gemara says simply, Ein mazel Yisrael, there's no mazel. But like we said, your Jew says mazel tov, you should have a good mazel. I mean, the Gemara says ein mazel Yisrael. It means we're not bound by mazel. We're not bound by mazel in the simple meaning of the Gemara. The Gemara says ein mazel Yisrael. There's no mazel by ye. We say mazel tov. Now the Torah says, what do you say in Kiddush Tavanis? Simon Torah mazel tov. Even Torah says you say mazel tov. Yeah? So what does it mean? It means a Jew has mazel, which comes from the level of ayin. But a Jew is not bound by, a Jew could change mazel. Even the Gemara speaks about the famous story of Rabbi Kiva's daughter. She was supposed to die on a wedding day and she didn't. You know, the whole story. And then, why? Because she gave tzedakah the day of her wedding. So she was safe. Tzedakah tatzum imavas.
How does that work with what Baal Shem Tov says, the fact that the leaves fall this way versus this way is predestined?
It's predestined, but we could change it, but Hashem knows what we're going to change, so it's initially in the program from above, the change that we're causing. Why do you have to go to a leaf? Somebody is sick, you make a mishaberach, you say Tillim.
Change the name.
Or change the name. No, not change, add a name. We don't, the yokels, the hocus pocus, mukabon change names. We don't change names, we add names. But that changes the mazel that the person should live. Didn't Hashem know? Hashem knew that you're going to daven. He's not causing you. You're doing it. Hashem is not making us daven. Our davening did it. But Hashem knows what we're going to choose. So it's already in the pre-program what's going to happen. A guy walks in the street and sees those little balls, and you give it a kick. Whatever, yeah? So the Baal Shem Tov, that's Hashgacha Pratis, yeah? You did it. Yeah, Hashgacha Pratis is known. Hashem knows that you're going to do it at this and this moment, and that's why it happened. He's not causing you to do it.
Shavuos night.
What?
Shavuos night.
Yeah, but it's only for Azab. Okay, base. Achine Yomer Azal, Chazal say, Mi shetar b'erev Shabbos yechol b'Shabbos. If you work Erev Shabbos, you can eat on Shabbos. L'kachzi v'shomer b'nei Yisrael to Shabbos la'aseis. We have to make the Shabbos. Kloimar, sheyishme michol l'Shabbos. The person has to guard from Chol to Shabbos, gam l'sakin ad ba'atzmei. You have to fix yourself. But last is benafshi eser Shabbos. We have to make this level of Shabbos. We have to make this level of Shabbos. Shi be'emes kach. In other words, he says how? Last is Shabbos benafshi b'meisecho, which is ayidei tefillah. Alter Rebbe is explaining here, in order for a Jew to have Shabbos properly, the Torah says it's only by making Shabbos during the week. Misha Torah Erev Shabbos, and again, Erev Shabbos doesn't only mean Friday, it means a whole week. By making Shabbos during the week, then when Shabbos really comes, it's internalized in a way that you really have it. And he says, what's the level of Shabbos during the week? The level of Tefillah. Davening. Davening is a Shabbos that exists in every week, every day. So the person davening Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, at that moment they're supposed to be on the level of Shabbos. And that's the concept of V'shomer b'nei Yisod Laseis. Ki hinei, why is Tefillah the level of Shabbos? Because it says in Tikkun Zohar, Ki Tefillah Yisulam Mutzav Artza V'reishim Agia Shemayim. What is the level of davening? From Yaakov's dream, ladder going from earth to heaven. Malach Elikim Elim v'Yardim Bay, and the angels go up and down. Malach Elikim a mitzvahs, because Malachim are shluchah de Malka, the messengers of Hashem. Hoy mechabden the same mitzvah, same shluchai v'shliach shalom kameis. It says in the Medrash like this: honor my mitzvahs because they're my shluchim, and Malachim are shluchim. So mitzvahs are shluchim of Hashem. Okay, so he says, in other words, it's later, but by the concept of tefillah, which is the malachim going up and down, that refers to the level of mitzvahs. Okay, we'll leave it here because now he starts all over.